Welcome to part 1 of building version 2 of the Enraged Rabbit Carrot Feeder color changing system. To build this, I decided to get the ERCF V2 kit from Siboor. The kit actually gives you everything you need, not just for the Enraged Rabbit Carrot Feeder, but also the Cottontail, which is a filament buffer, and the Filametrix, which is the automatic filament cutter, which is really everything you need to have a successful build. I've just started building this kit, so I don't actually have one to show you. But again, here you can see what the different pieces look like. The buffering system, LED lighting system, uh, the filament cutting system, which is important to help eliminate jams. But this also comes with the BigTreeTech EBB MMB board, which is a really nice controller board that all the inputs and up to 4 motors can be controlled. It comes with the 2209 driver. The kit comes with the servos, quite a large number of BMG gears for the 8 different channels. And then all the parts come in this great toolbox, which helps keep you organized, which frankly is just wonderful, critical in terms of the build and being successful. And it comes with the stepper motors that you need, the belts that you need, and it comes with this great CNC gear that frankly is beautiful. You'll see it later in the video. And so this is a part you won't have to build. And honestly, best of all, it comes with pre-crimped cables. I can't think of a better way to improve your success and the reliability of what you build because these do come pre-crimped. Unlike me, well, I'm just not the greatest crimper in the world. My cables are not as reliable as they could be, and so ultimately, I really see this as helping quite a bit. Some folks in the ERCF community went through a lot of trouble to build this really beautiful manual. Frankly, there's just no way you're going to build this without looking at the manual, and I strongly recommend that you read through the entire manual first. It does give you the guidelines for printing, infill, percentages, layer heights, and so on, but extremely important, you need to print out these 2 parts which help you calibrate your printer. Otherwise, you're going to have an impossible time building this. And I ended up printing these out probably about 5 or 6 times, making adjustments to making sure everything fit properly. It tells you everything you need about naming and colors. It's got your hardware reference. It recommends some tools, but because I am using the kit, I won't need the angle grinder, the vise, the wiring crimper. Again, all of this in the Siboor kit comes all pre-done for you, which is really quite nice. And also, when you do print the parts, you can skip the 80 teeth gear wheel because the kit comes with a beautiful CNC version. Here the manual shows you how to work with the calibration tool, which are really these 2 prints, and you can use your magnets, your nuts, some filament, just to make sure this all works properly. If you feel like going ahead printing all the parts and just going ahead and pre-populating or pre-inserting the heatset inserts, this shows you where to go to do that in the manual as well. And if you need to, the step files can be gathered at the GitHub if you want to take a look at how all the parts go together. Also, if you have an ERCF V1, there's upgrade details. Because I'm using the kit, there's a section here that focuses on the wiring, but everything's pre-wired, pre-cut, pre-crimped, again, which is really nice, saves quite a bit of time, at least in the Siboor kit. So you won't have to do any of these things. And because we're using, or the kit came with the BigTreeTech controller that actually gets installed right at the ERCF, again, that simplifies all of this. So in this video, I'm going to jump into the gearbox. We're going to see how this goes together. It's really not difficult at all. The manual is also really nice, and it shows you these blow-up views where you can see the details, how all the parts go together. And again, as you can see, the manual really covers assembly really nicely. So now we start with building the gearbox. Here you can see I've already gone ahead and inserted the heat set inserts, at least the easy ones. These heat set inserts came with the kit. There's two here that are a little tricky, and for those two, I've taken this hex bolt that I've had, well, that you probably have as well too. And what's happening here is I am screwing it into the heat set insert, and then I'm going to use the bolt to help apply pressure on it while I use my soldering iron because it's a really tight spot, which will help me get these inserted properly and fairly straight. I had a little bit of difficulty doing this. The tip on my soldering iron was quite thick, and so, well, I melted a little bit of plastic in some places unintentionally. But that said, it worked and everything fit fine once I was done. Next, we install the extruder bearings. So here all the inserts are placed, and this is where the bearing needs to go. And I have a bit of a tight fit here, so I ended up using an N4 bolt, a nut, and a washer. And here, this will allow me to, in a very straight manner, force the bearing into the spot where it needs to be. And then here you can see when I remove the screw and the nut, the bearing is installed perfectly. Next, we install the end stop switch. Here you can see where the switch slides in. There's an opening here. And got these super small M2 screws, which you will need to align and get started. But once you're done, it should look like this, with the end of the micro switch hanging down like that. Next, we get the pre-cut length of extrusion from the kit. Here I'm just cleaning it out. There was some dust and I guess styrofoam packing material dust. And here you can see the nice organizer box that Siboor provides with all the parts, which is, again, it's pretty fantastic, keeps you super organized, and lots of little parts easy to find. And here I'm installing these with the hole closest to the edge, and you do this for both sides. Once those are done, get some M3 screws and make sure to align this properly and make sure it's fully seated, but this should slide right in, and then simply bolt these down. Here I'm making sure these are sitting flush before I fully tighten this down. Next is the gearbox back, and here you can see I've already got the heat inserts inserted, but we also have to put another one of those extruder bearings in here. And so I'm simply going to resort to the same method I used before, the M3 bolt and washers and a nut. And again, I did two in the print, so this is a tight fit, but it does fit. It's a little bit hard to do by hand, and this will also ensure that I get the bearing in here really straight and nice. Once that's complete, there's two of these latches that you've printed, and here I'm taking an M3 bolt, inserting it and applying some pressure so I can release the hinge, and now we have a working hinge. Do it for both. Next, we take the gearbox back, and we're going to attach it to complete the gearbox. And as you can see, there's a little tab here where these two fit. And here I'm trying to align those. And then, of course, we're going to use some M3 bolts to tighten this whole thing up. Here I'm inserting the other bolt to tighten this down. Just making sure everything is nice and tight and all the gaps are closed. Next, we need to route the wires through the entrance here on the edge of the extrusion. And again, this is as per instructions. Next, we install the latch. Not sure why, but I got confused which way is up a few times. Be sure to check the manual closely here so you don't make the same mistake I did. The screw should go through the actual hole on the hinge, like so. And then once that's in place, on the back side of the latch, it does not actually go through the latch at all. You simply have to screw it in, and the back side of the latch has a hook that's supposed to hook onto that bolt once it's completely screwed in. And so Here I'm lifting it up. See, there's the hook that goes onto the screw. And then simply bolt this in. Then comes the gearing of the gearbox. And here you can see the gear that Siboor includes, which greatly simplifies the construction here. And here I've got the 3D printed spacers, as well as the handle, the shaft, the belt, and the shaft, the gear, the belt. They all came with the Siboor kit. To insert the gear in the gear shaft, the manual states that it should be at least 12.7 millimeters from the end. Looking into this, you can go a little bit further. I mean, 13 or 14 is probably just fine as well. I'm tightening this now, um, although not terribly tight. I'm going to go over it a little bit later because we will have to align this and the belt and one of the other pulleys. Also, I'm not using it, but you should really be using thread locker on all of this as well too. Again, I'm going to go back and take care of this later. But for now, I'm really test fitting everything to make sure this all works, and I recommend you do the same. Once that's complete, we can insert the D shaft and the gear through the bearings, and it should fit nice and snug. And again, we'll make some adjustments in a little bit. And here I'm just placing the belt. Again, this will be adjusted and tightened later. Next, we install the motor arms. The kit comes with NEMA 17 motors. So for the Siboor kit, you want to print the motor arms for the NEMA 17 motors. You've got the two pre-wired motors. Although you see me here using the shorter one for a moment, if you look at the manual, you want to use the longer lead wires for this part of the kit. And here I'm checking the motor again, just to make sure it's NEMA 17. You might as well check yours, but I'm pretty sure that's what all Siboor kits come with. So here I'm using the 3D printed spacer, and this allows you to set the pulley position on the shaft correctly. And again, be sure to use thread locker to make sure these don't come undone. Again, you really don't want these to come apart. You can see as soon as I touched it, it moved. So I'm just checking. And tightening these down. So to assemble the motor arm, you will need a heat set insert. You'll need another one of these extruder bearings. And to insert this, I'm going to use the same trick I did before, the bolt with the washer and the nut to get this in. And there it is, inserted. And don't forget the heat set insert. And now we attach the motor. I'm simply using the screws as specified in the manual as well as spacer. And now we mount the motor and motor arm to the gearbox. Then we finish inserting the screws, although the latch is going to go in here. And then test out the latch, make sure it works. Tighten these motor bolts. Then make sure these wires are coming through the space between the end of the extrusion and the gearbox. Then insert the D-shaft knob. Mine was substantially tight here, and so it took quite a bit of effort, but it did slip on. So the Gates belt isn't quite adjusted here. As you can see, it's not really centered. In fact, it tends to want to ride to one side. So I spent a little bit of time adjusting this after giving it a few turns, to make sure it seems to be moving or is set into a particular position before making any additional adjustments. So here I just loosened up the pulley just a little bit and then slide it over just a tiny bit and then tighten it down. And then again, turn it for a little bit to see where the belt ends up. And it'll take you a few times to get this taken care of, but eventually you'll get it. And here you can see it. Well, maybe not. um, Due to my poor placement here, I got very involved with the belt and forgot to notice where I was in relation to the camera. But you can see just a little bit the belt is starting to make its way over. Required a little bit of manual persuasion here, but eventually it did center or get close enough. And just to make sure, I turn it quite a few times to make sure the belt doesn't ride anywhere else. And then once it's looking pretty good, you can tighten this down. Again, this is where you probably want some thread locker. There you go. Next, we want to attach the cover plate for the gearbox as well as the base or the stand for the gearbox, which of course covers the bottom as well. And here I'm just test fitting, making sure I've got this set up correctly. And here you can see how it fits around the extrusion. It's also got the leg, or rather the two legs for the one side of ERCF. Then flip it over, get the cover correct for the other side, tucking the wires in. And that concludes part one of building the gearbox for the Enraged Rabbit Carrot Feeder. And please stay tuned. There will be multiple more episodes as I finish this. If you found this video useful, please click subscribe.